From the 22 News Plus studio, this is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of InFocus. I'm your host, Patrick Berry. We're here in the 22 News Plus studios. Today, we're learning about the 7th Hampden District, and your Massachusetts State Representative, Aaron Saunders, is sitting across the desk from me today. Representative Saunders, thank you so much for joining me.
It's my pleasure, Patrick. Happy to be here.
I'm glad to talk to you because you represent one of those unique districts here in Massachusetts. It's very rural, but it is probably, I would argue, probably one of the most beautiful areas of Massachusetts because it's in and around the Quabbin, which in and of itself is a beautiful place.
I tend to agree. The 7 communities that comprise the district, it's largely rural and suburban, and it offers some of the great hiking, hunting, and fishing that we have in the Commonwealth.
And because of the type of district that it is, its ruralness, you have distinct and unique challenges that Springfield doesn't have. And I want to get into some of those challenges that you and your constituents are facing, but I'm going to ask you, and you may have heard it from some of your counterparts, I ask the same question of every single elected official that sits across from me. Why? Why did you seek out elected office? In today's world where there's a lot of animosity between politicians, between constituents and politicians, why put you, and more importantly, why put your family in that position?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, unfortunately, the toxicity of today's politics have kept a good number of really good people who could be great public servants out of the picture. But I felt that there was some good to be done and that I might have an opportunity to help move the ball down the field, so to speak. I have 3 daughters and a wife who need a commonwealth and a region and a country, quite frankly, to be able to thrive in. And if there's a little bit that I can do to help with that, whether it's making the state more affordable, whether it's making healthcare access more attainable, then I want to be part of that solution.
So, but being a state rep isn't your first elected office. You kind of, like most people, I would say most people in state elected office, you work your way up. And I don't mean that in a career advancement. It's just more of an understanding of policy procedure. You started out as a locally.
Yeah, I was on the select board in Ludlow for 6 years, and it provided an opportunity to really understand how government can impact folks and how it could help. Simultaneous to that, I had the opportunity to work with U.S. Senator John Kerry when he was in office, and that was my first real chance to see how a call into an office from a widow trying to navigate Social Security and the VA system, how government could help just cut across some of that red tape and make an incredibly difficult time in someone's life a little bit easier to manage. And having that experience, it was great. And I spent those 6 years in local government, and then I had a nice life in the private sector. And when the seat opened up a couple of years ago, I received calls from a handful of folks asking me if I was interested. And my first inclination, honestly, was, what you said at the intro was like, why am I going to put my family into this? Why have, the Facebook,
Oh God, yeah.
community forums light up with this guy's, this, that, the other thing. But it really did occur after some thinking, some conversation with the family, that there is good to be done. And if you have that opportunity, you got to take it.
So is this something, going back to maybe your high school days that you thought, down the road, was it ever something you thought about, or no, just sort of the way your life progressed? Like, I do need to give back.
It's been something I've tried to do throughout my life and give back. And you can do that in a lot of different ways. Public service and elected office is one of those ways. And again, so much of this is being in the right place at the right time, and when it's the right time for you as well.
Right.
So, when now Senator Oliveira started his campaign for Senate, it seemed as though there needed to be a strong voice for Western Mass in that seat to make sure that we don't lose any ground. I mean, we have as many state reps in the 4 Western counties as the city of Boston has by itself.
Right.
So we have to punch above our weight. And I thought I could bring some effort and energy and expertise to that, and now going into my second term, I have the honor of being the acting chair of the Agriculture Committee. We've been able to bring millions of dollars back to the Seventh Hamden District and the greater Western Mass region generally. And even in the face of some tremendous headwinds, whether it's macroeconomic headwinds, whether it's headwinds from the federal government, we keep pushing along, and there's nothing that's going to do to stop us.
One of the things I have heard pretty consistently from our Western Mass delegation is that there is a uniform fight, a uniform consensus, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, because to your point, the amount of people representing Western Mass is less than the amount of people representing the city of Boston. So you have to have that common ground where, again, no matter what letter is next to your name, that you need the four counties of Western Mass to be heard at the State House.
And I'd say, maybe with some notable exceptions, Massachusetts bucks the national trend. We work closely across the aisle, and we have to. Again, in Western Mass, we don't have the luxury of setting aside one group or another to get to where we need to go. And whether that's transportation priorities, whether that's energy priorities or healthcare or housing. And I've worked with my Republican colleagues and Democrat colleagues on issues where we all agree Western Mass needs us to be working together. And it's a breath of fresh air. And honestly, I wish folks got to see more of that. Right. When so much of what we hear is the vitriol of one side versus the other. There's so much that we, as residents of Massachusetts and as Americans, quite frankly, agree on. And if we're able to put that
first, it's the extremes that get the recognition.
Unfortunately, it does. And so much of the common work that we wake up every morning and put our minds to doesn't always get the limelight. We'll keep highlighting that to the best we can.
We are up on our first commercial break, but when we come back, I do want to talk to you about some of the issues your constituents are coming to your office with and hear how you're addressing them. Stay with us, folks. We're back in a moment.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry. This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Welcome back, everyone, to this edition of In Focus. Joining me in the hot seat today representing the 7th Hamden District is Massachusetts State Representative Aaron Saunders. Rep. Saunders, thank you again for joining me. Before we went to break, we were talking about some of the issues that you face at the State House. What are those issues that your constituents are bringing? I mean, because what you might be facing at the State House could be slightly different than what you're hearing from members of your communities.
Yeah, at the top of the list, it's affordability. One of the challenges that we have in state government is we have a certain ability to move the needle here or there. But when we're facing tremendous macroeconomic headwinds, when we're facing energy costs spiking because of the decision to bomb Iran, our ability to respond to that needs to be nimble. We need to do what we can when we can do it. I think affordability is at the top of the list. And thinking about that in everything that we do. Energy prices, certainly something we've heard about. The cold winter that we had this past year, and again with gasoline prices skyrocketing now, finding a way to respond to that both within our control in state government that's responsive but also responsible at the same time. So the House passed an energy bill that's now over with the Senate. That will save $9 billion over the next several years directly to ratepayers in a variety of ways. And these are steps that we need to continue to take. And then certainly housing. And Western Mass has its own unique housing needs that may be a little bit different from Eastern Mass. But how do we find a way to make home ownership available to young families? How do we find it to be accessible for people to find affordable places to live, and whether that's renting or owning. And there are steps that we can take and investments that we've made to help make that come to fruition. It takes a little bit of time, but I think we're on the path to doing our part to making Massachusetts more affordable.
So I'm very fortunate. I live in Westfield. So we have a municipal utility in Westfield. So the the energy issues and the cost increases, again, I'm very fortunate. I don't really see that with a municipal utility. Are there are there any municipal utilities in the communities that you represent, or are they all powered by these larger
Yeah,
companies?
so the 7 communities I have, are part of the investor-owned utility, National Grid and Eversource. However, ironically, MWIC, the wholesale company for a lot of the municipals, is in Ludlow. So,
Okay.
municipal energy policy is important to me in the district. I part of what we've done on the energy front is, first to make sure that when energy companies are purchasing energy on behalf of consumers, their hands aren't tied to doing it just 2 times a year,
Right.
usually when prices are highest. It's gonna give, not only the ability, but set the mandate for utility companies to find the best price on behalf of consumers. We've, allowed, municipal aggregation to ensure that communities can shop for the best price using the entirety of their ratepayer base. So all the businesses and residents who want to be part of a larger group to get a better price can come together to bring those costs down. And we've also done it on the areas where state government has more control.
Okay.
The Mass Safe program has gotten out of control, and our bill that we passed a couple of weeks ago will cut that program by $1 billion. And that's aimed towards their marketing and advertising costs.
But that will still help people make their homes more energy
Oh,
efficient.
absolutely. I mean, and even after this $1 billion cut, we will have one of, if not the most robust, energy efficiency program
Okay.
per capita. We will be just behind California and New York and ahead of the rest of the country. But we got to keep an eye on these things. And when we look at numbers in the hundreds of millions for marketing budgets and for bonuses to utility companies, it really is where we need to step in and set the record straight on behalf of the folks that we represent.
Uh, I I want to talk a little bit, shift gears a little bit, and talk about your district, because your district and affordability, energy costs are all kind of tied together. I'm going to pull up a map. This is your district. So it's from Ludlow in the southwest up all the way up to what's that, Petersham in the northeast.
Petersham, yeah,
Petersham.
yeah. You go to Petersham, you only make that mistake once.
Okay.
It's
Nearly 60 years old. I've been calling it Petersham the whole time. But if you look at that, it's rural. It's
Yep.
very rural, like we said earlier. But it's a beautiful part of the world. So how do you make or increase affordable housing in those areas? There's not a lot of jobs there. Most of those people from Petersham, New Salem, Shutesbury, Wendell, they all have to drive
Yeah.
somewhere else. So how do you build housing there and make energy more affordable, because it costs money to get the energy to those homes?
Yeah, it's a unique challenge, right? So housing is a challenge all over the state. In
Right.
rural Massachusetts, it's a unique challenge because not only do you have the issues that you mentioned, but for most of my district, they don't have municipal water and sewer.
Oh,
They're
good
on
point.
wells and septics.
Right.
It's hard to build out a subdivision of 75 homes if you don't have access to water and sewer. The irony, of course, is that the Quabbin Reservoir is right there, and none of
You
the
can't tap into
communities
it.
have access to the water that they're literally and figuratively stewarding. So the way that we do it is we figure out what works for rural communities, right? So, um, Home City Development, which is based out of Springfield, recently figured out how to put in about 3 dozen units of affordable housing in Pelham.
Oh,
And if
wow.
you can put affordable housing in Pelham, you can put it anywhere.
Right.
And it's a little bit more costly, and we recognize that, but it's also necessary. So that connectivity of working with the PVTA to make sure there's a bus route there, and ensuring that the the services that folks would expect in Springfield or Worcester and Boston are also available, to the extent that they're available in our rural communities is a part of that, a big piece of that puzzle.
You talk about transportation, and that's one of the issues I wanted to bring up with you is the way your district, and I'll bring it up again, the
Yeah.
way your district falls. Ludlow to the south, east-west rail,
Yep.
will probably hit the south. east-west rail will all probably hit the northern tier too.
Yep.
So you might end up with transportation options down the road that would benefit. However, that's going to boost your home value prices.
Yeah, and this is one of the challenges that rural communities in Massachusetts face, and certainly the communities I represent are no different, is that we reward traditional commercial and economic development through local tax receipts, right? That if you
pilot programs, whatever it might be. Yeah.
Well, and the pilots are challenged because they don't truly recognize the value. But when you have a row of businesses or a mall, these are places that aren't putting kids in schools.
Right.
They are traditionally valued at a higher rate than what you would see for a home or a farm, and they contribute commensurate to the value of their land. In these rural communities, the only revenue that they receive is from homeowners.
Right.
And then there's
All
a
property
pilot payment.
taxes. Right.
And state-owned land or land that's owned by the MWRA, it doesn't come close to making up for what's needed to have true equity, where kids can go to school with the same opportunities as kids from districts that have greater state support or larger commercial tax bases or separate corporate support. It's one of the things that we need to fix immediately. At the risk of getting into the weeds, it's called the Chapter 70 formula. This is what determines what school districts get how much money. We need to change that formula to support our suburban and rural schools that have been left behind, especially as enrollment numbers decline. A school building doesn't care if you have 10 less kids next year than this year. It still needs to be heated.
Right.
If a door or window breaks in a school, it doesn't matter how many kids are in that class. It costs the same to repair that door or that window.
And those repairs are getting more expensive.
Exactly. So we need a funding formula that recognizes those threshold costs and addresses it so it doesn't put the type of pressure that local taxpayers are feeling.
We are up on our second commercial break. When we come back, Quabbin is a huge chunk of land area, not land, area in your district, and it presents some challenges. And when we come back, we'll get into those challenges. Stay with us. We're back in just a minute.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry. This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Welcome back, everyone, to this edition of In Focus. Joining me across the desk, representing the 7th Hampden District, is your Massachusetts State Representative, Aaron Saunders. Representative Saunders, again, thank you. We've covered a lot of ground, and I made the comment before we went to break about the body of water, and I'll bring up your district, the body of water that is the Quabbin Reservoir. It takes up a lot of acreage in your district, but it also creates some challenges too. We were talking about affordability, housing, development. It's the Quabbin watershed, which the builders in your communities have to understand and work around.
Yeah.
But because of that watershed, they can't build. So is there a plan, or are you having conversations of maybe compensating the communities because they can't add to their tax base? So how can the state help?
Yes. So I guess two things to level set. The communities do receive a pilot payment, and it's for the value of the land, which is really what's at issue. But when you put into consideration that the Quabbin is responsible for ensuring that millions of people and businesses, the vast majority of which are in Eastern Mass, have clean, reliable, seemingly limitless drinking water. It's not an exaggeration to say that the Quabbin Reservoir is responsible for the economic growth and success of the greater Boston region.
I would agree with that.
You can't build without water.
Right.
And
Can't live without water.
What we need to do is find the appropriate consideration for the value that the Quabbin Reservoir and the watershed has for the Commonwealth, and ensure that the communities that are responsible for stewarding this land and protecting it, protecting the watershed, do not feel as though they're being put out by having to increase local property taxes through the roof to get their kids to school.
Right.
And right now there's a tremendous imbalance. The value of the water in the watershed is immeasurable. and these communities receive a pittance. And it's been something that I, along with my colleagues who represent the watershed, have been actively working on really since the day that I took office. We need to have appropriate recompense for these communities,
Absolutely.
recognizing the value of this land and this watershed, and also recognizing that we don't need to develop. We need to protect it, because protecting that watershed protects the water, and it allows the state to continue to grow and thrive. We just got to find some balance.
You know, one of the things I like to do with this show and periodically with some guests, and you're going to fall into this category, is have some fun. All right. So the way it happened to work out, we just talked about water, and if anybody knows you, they know you like a certain form of water, and it comes as a part of Loophole Brewing. When you go to their website, you know, we've all heard the joke, chief, cook, and bottle washer.
Yeah.
You're the chief. There's a cook, there's a bottle washer, there's a brewer, there's whole 9 yards. You don't tap into the Quabbin to get the water for the Loophole, do you?
No. It was a great run with Loophole, and you know, one of the things that was sort of unique about going through a pandemic, looking to launch a business, is you figure out everything that is challenging about starting and running a business, and then it gets put on steroids when you in the midst of a global pandemic for it. But you know, so Jeff Goulet, who's really taken over the reins and running the show now, is a great guy.
I may have to say, Jeff is probably more well known than you are.
Everyone knows Hefe. Everyone knows Hefe, without a doubt. And he's a great guy, wonderful to work with, and he's going to do great things with Loophole moving forward.
You know, it's interesting. You know, we are very fortunate here in Massachusetts, and probably in New England. We have a lot of local breweries. It's a micro economy, quite frankly. Now, did you get into it because you like it, or was it, you know Jeff, you knew some of the others, and it's like, hey, this thing could work?
You know, that's always the initial interest. You got to like what you do,
right?
But I think for Loophole, the opportunity to work with some good people, you know, ideally keep growing an industry in Western Mass where, I mean, you mentioned it. You look around, and there's so many great local breweries that put out really superb product and make great beer, and it's a real testament as the overall industry has taken a bit of a turn. So many of the local breweries have not only survived but thrived,
right?
And
they all have their niche.
They sure do, and you know they've turned into neighborhood spots. You can find, you know, we're up in Belchertown last week for it's mapling season. So we're up in Belchertown for the Shattuck Sugar Fest, and they teamed up with Vanish Valley Brewing in Ludlow to make a maple brown.
Absolutely.
And you know, in seeing this interconnection, you know, sure, it's business and it's great, but it really is community. Right. And to see these two small businesses in my district come together to collaborate on something like this. I mean, it was raining, it was cold. There were hundreds of people there having a great time, and it's a real testament, you know, not only to you say the industry, but to the people behind it. They have a real commitment to our communities, and it's one of the things that I love the best about it.
Absolutely. Well, I love to end on a fun note. So, Rep. Saunders, thank you so very much for talking a little bit about Loophole, especially, and also more importantly, talking about your district. And I greatly appreciate your time. Good seeing you.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.